So I would like to add another method to the controller. Start animation. Okay. And in this animation thing, what I would like to do is this. So basically, this class, thread animation, represents a separate thread of execution. Okay. So it implements runnable as one of the ways to represent a new thread. And when I add this method start animation, what I do is that I create new thread animation and simply create an object, it represents like a background process, right? And then what we do is that we create new thread, new Java thread, and give this runnable, an object that implements runnable interface to it, and simply say start. So when we say start, this thread animation run method will be invoked. Okay. So, but to make it usable, I think that my animation thread, right? So the data part of it, and these are the operations, right? And this will be our constructors. That I think it needs to have access to our controller, right? Because it can send messages to the controller. Okay. So the controller demo is the type of controller I'm using here, kind of silly name. Controller. Okay, and so we will create a constructor for thread animation. Public. This can be private, I think, right there. But public constructor will take controller demo as parameter. Okay, we'll take the reference to the controller right here, and it will then say, let's remember who is our controller, right? So we say controller equals this controller that was given to us, right? So the thread animation instance, when it gets created, it just gets access to the controller. And guess what? When we eventually get to run, right, what we can do is that we can say controller animate. Okay, controller animate. However, remember that animate gets access to the window, right? So the animate gets access to the window, and our obligation is that this must be done on event dispatch thread, on the EDT thread of Java Swing library. We cannot just routinely go from some background thread and say, hey, let's access text area and make updates to it. No, this stuff needs to be done on the event dispatch thread. So we can actually narrow this maybe over here to just the update, the final update right here. When we say set text, maybe we need to make sure that this happens on the event dispatch thread. This work with floors and stuff can be done basically right now, can be done on the worker thread. Okay, so let me see. Right, so what we can do then, if that's the case, we basically just say controller animate. For now, we're just gonna do it just once, just one single instance, one single call to animate, and we will see what that does. Okay, but now that animate may be called from a different thread of execution, the concern is again that this final stage, when we say this area display the information, we have to do this on the separate on the event dispatch thread. So let's make sure that we do that. And I will just simply look it up as it's being done pretty much since day one that we started talking about this. We're just gonna use event queue and invoke later with a new runnable creation right here. So it's essentially we're just gonna do something absolutely similar to this portion right here. And when we say Java, application window thread, event queue, and so forth, we're going to be doing it over here as well, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste this portion from our main method and make sure that this here happens on the event dispatch thread. How about that? Let's just try this, right? So it's just it looks a little silly, right? But that's what I need to do. Now I need to switch from whatever I am doing over here in the display elevators. Now I need to say that, but this thing, when I work with the window and I want to access the area and I want to change its text, and that's the value that I want to change it to, right? So right now I will have to do this on the event dispatch thread, and I think my comment is gone, so I will add it back, right? Make sure that the actual update happens on the event dispatch thread, whatever, like EDT thread. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind. And then I'm thinking that now when I click that button, instead of directly jumping to say animate, right? Instead, I will create, I will instantiate the thread animation and will give it the controller, and then we know that it will be animated. Let me check again. When is it going to be animated? Yeah, we're just gonna call start animation on the controller. How about this? So let's give this a try. I'll just move this to a separate separate tab right here. So my elevator here. I'll just close that for now. All right. So and this is my main view, right? So I have my button. That button calls animate. Instead, I will be calling start animation. Start animation. Start animation. That's what the button is going to do. Essentially, the button click tells the controller, let's start the animation. The start animation now needs to create this thread animation, but thread animation now has the constructor that requires a controller, a reference, right? So that's why, because this is happening inside the controller reference is simply this, right? This is the reference to the controller. So let's save everything and make sure that we can well, we can just give it a try, right? So we'll just run it, I guess, right? So here we go. And so now move the elevator right here inside frame main window. Does not do anything directly. It calls the controller and says start the animation. The controller has the start animation. What start animation does, it creates the thread animation as new object, then creates new thread and passes the thread animation as a parameter, and then it calls start, right? the call to start will actually invoke inside thread animation this method named run, and it will do one single thing. It will go right back to the controller and say animate, right? So it's kind of basically convoluted way to say start animation will make a single call, but from a separate thread of execution to animate. The animate will move two elevators, two business objects. It will then call the display elevators. But remember, this call to animate originates from a separate thread of execution, the background thread of execution, right? And so we're all good to do all this work on the separate thread of execution only until we say that we want to update the window component. That has to happen on the event dispatch thread. That's why we say event dispatch thread, let's do this on your queue and invoke later, and we'll just create new runnable with an idea that with this update. So let's take a look. Right, so move elevator. So here we go. Right, so it still works now, but we now have this background thread that does this. Right, so it's not very interesting, but it does the work, I guess. Right, so let's close this. Okay, so this is an interesting achievement so far. Right, so just make it more interesting, I guess, right now.